In Lesson 7.2, we're going to talk about angles. So first, it's helpful to know what an angle is. So we're going to come down here. Okay. So an angle is two rays that share an endpoint. Remember, rays are the one-sided arrows. We talked about those in 7.1. So now when you put two rays together and they have the same endpoint, it makes an angle. And the vertex is the point where two rays meet. Think of it like a corner of the angle. So now we're going to classify different types of angles. This first type, so here are the two rays, and here's the vertex. This is the vertex. Okay, and your angle is always named by, the angle happens at the vertex. So this is where the angle is measured. So this is the angle. A really small angle is called an acute angle, and it has a measurement between 0 and 90 degrees. Between. It's not going to equal 0 and it doesn't equal 90, but it's between those two numbers. A nice, perfect L-shaped angle, and you'll usually see a little box in the corner here. That tells you this is a right angle, and it exactly measures 90 degrees. That's why over here we had to say between, because as soon as it hits 90 degrees, we call it a right angle. And an angle here, here's my angle. If it's bigger than 90 degrees, we call it obtuse. And it's between 90 and 180 degrees. Now, remember we say between because as soon as it hits, here's my little vertex, this is the angle. As soon as it hits 180 degrees, we call it a straight angle. So these are the four types of angles. Acute are the small angles. Right are as soon as it hits that 90 degree L. Obtuse is as it starts getting bigger. And straight when it makes a straight line. Okay, so let's pause the video and fill all that in before we scroll down. Now, types of angles, as we put them together, are going to be adjacent and vertical. Now, adjacent angles are, they share one ray. They're next to each other. Because adjacent means next to each other or touching on a side. So if I have to look here, okay, in this little picture, circle an angle adjacent to angle 1. Well, here's angle 1. So adjacent means next to or touching. So angle 2 would be adjacent, and also angle 4 because it touches on the other side. So 2 and 4 are both adjacent. Now vertical angles, I'm going to say that they form a perfect X. Whoops, forgot my E. Okay, they are across from each other. They're across the X from each other. Where adjacent are touching, they're next to each other. Vertical are across the X. So over here, vertical, here's angle 1. Across, see how here's the X? Here's the nice X. Across the X is angle 3. That's vertical. And if the sum of two measures is 90 degrees, then we call that complementary. And if the sum is 180 degrees, then it's called supplementary. Okay? So there's various ways to remember the difference between these two, but complementary has one P, and if you look at P, it's kind of like a backwards 9, so it's 90. Complementary is 90. Supplementary has two P's, so it's like a 90 and a 90, which adds up to 180. So if you have two 90s, that makes 180, that's supplementary. If you just have one P, that's 190, that's complementary. All right, so I'm going to have to scroll down so I can make that little box there go away. So pause the video if you need to before we fill in these blanks. All right. I'll just fill it in. That's complementary, complementary, supplementary. Okay, so if they tell me right here that these two angles are complementary, remember that means 90. So if one of the angles is 51, what do I have to add to 51 to get 90? So you can just subtract what they gave you from 90. I have to borrow. That becomes 39. So this guy must be 39 degrees. And if I see supplementary, well, 2 P's means 180. So 65 plus what gives me 180. So just subtract what you're given from what they need to add up to. 10 minus 5 is 5, 1, 1. So 115 degrees. And congruent angles are angles that have the same measure. Okay, and the symbol for congruent is an equal sign with a squiggle over it, because they're not equal, they're not the same angle, they're just the same size. So we have to show that they're equal, but two different objects. So that's why I put the little squiggle up on top, so that we know it doesn't mean exactly the same, it just means they're the same size. But they're two different things. Alright, so pause the video, fill all that in before moving on. Alright, now let's do some examples. How long is this? Okay, whew. These are some long sections here, huh? Alright, so here we go. We need to identify the acute angles, the obtuse angles, and the straight angles. Okay. Now, we're going to name angles. This is going to get tricky. Okay. We're going to use 3 letters. Whoops. To name angles. Okay. And the middle letter is where the angle forms, or the vertex. That's an F. Okay, so my acute angles. Remember, acute means from 0 to 90. So where do I see small angles in this picture? It looks like this angle is small. It looks like this angle is small. Now, when I name angle L, I want to follow the lines that make L. So here's angle L. So I want to follow the line. So I went from M to L to N. So angle M, L, N. Now, if I want to name angle N here, let's draw the lines that make angle N, so that N is in the middle, and it would be M, N, L. M, N, L. Obtuse angles are bigger angles. Okay, so I kind of see 2 obtuse angles. I definitely see this angle here, right? That one looks really big. So the lines that make that are from K to L to M. And this little less than symbol, that just means angle. But you have to put that in front. And then it looks like angle M here at the top could also be obtuse. But let's name the lines that make that. Okay, so the lines that make that are from L to M to N. And our straight angle, this picture's getting a little crowded, but the straight angle here looks like it's at the bottom. So it goes from K to L to N. Alright, so that's naming angles. You want to use 3 angles, and you just want to follow the line. So if it helps you to draw on the picture, go ahead and draw on the picture. Okay, so now let's find all the missing angles here. I'm going to actually scroll down, so pause this if you need to. Okay, so here we go. They tell us, they want us to find 1, 2, and 4, angle 1, angle 2, and angle 4. And they tell us that the measure of angle 3 is 32 degrees. So I'm going to cross that out, and I'm going to put a 32 right on my picture. Okay, so really the easiest one to find would be anybody who's across from 32. So I'm actually going to start with angle 1. Because angles that are across from each other are going to be the same. They're vertical. And so they're going to have the same measurement. So if angle 3 is 32, well, so is angle 1. That's 32 degrees. Now, angle 2 and 32 are right next to each other, right here. Angle 2 and angle 3, they're next to each other. And look what happens. If I put them together, I get a straight line. And a straight line is 180 degrees. And so that means that these two angles are supplementary. Supplementary. Okay, so if supplementary means they add up to 180. So 180, subtract that 32 that they gave me, gives me 145. Now angle 2 and angle 4 are right across from each other, so they're vertical. So they're going to be the same. So if 2 is 145, so is angle 4. Okay? And that's how you can find your missing angles. Anybody who's across the X from each other is going to have the same measurement. They'll be congruent. And anybody who's next to each other is going to be supplementary or add up to 180. Alright, so now we're going to try the quick check, or you're going to try the quick checks. And the first one, you have to find angle AFE. So draw the lines on the picture. Okay, connect these 3 letters and see what kind of angle it's formed. Acute, right, obtuse, or straight. You're just putting the word in the box. Find the measure of the complement. Complement of angle 3 in example 2. Well, here's example 2. Angle 3 was 32 degrees. So that means down here, measure of angle 3 is 32 degrees. So remember what complement means, and then find the complement to angle 3 using this number. And then in quick check 3, it's just like example 2. They give you one of these 4 angles. They give you angle 8, and they want you to find all the other ones. Okay, so make sure you label them. So you'll say measure of angle 5, give me a number, measure of angle 6, give me a number, and measure of angle 7, and put a number. Okay? So try those quick checks, and we'll check your work in class.